So, the supply drop, this was when exactly?
Right around the time we saw the ceasefire starting to break down. Must be more than a year ago now.
So, at that time, your camp was in the center of town?
Yeah, things were getting pretty desperate, though. I remember we hadn't been resupplied in months. No food, water, medicine. We were used to issues with logistics, but I don't know, in the end it got so bad U.S. forces prepared an airdrop. Not an easy task considering, but those crates, they really were life and death. That's why we needed somebody on the ground. Someone to make sure they came down okay.
And who was that?
A guy named Adams, part of the NATO peacekeeping force. Close friend of mine, actually. It was his job to locate a drop zone.
In the mountains?
Mm-hmm. Needless to say, High Command always had ideas, but they weren't always good. Plus, no one had planned for those crosswinds flaring up. But our supplies were already in the air.
He made a spur-of-the-moment decision?
Pretty much, yeah. Although he described it with more, direct language. From the way he told it, he may as well have. No, he went along with some new recruits, local bunch. It was his job to show them the ropes. Historic ties with the guerrillas. For years, people here would provide them with food, water.
I see.
The government responded by draining the swamp.
And that involved sending soldiers?
Yeah, coin ops. Adams and his guys were there to remind them of their R2P.
Just a sec. I'm getting a bit lost in the lingo here.
Oh, gotcha. R2P is their responsibility to protect. Counterinsurgency can get real messy real quick. He was in charge of training. Laws of armed conflict, that kind of thing. Adams normally tossed out an orange smoke grenade, which marked his position for the pilot. rice and grain. Adam said to inspect each one individually. Thankfully, the rice seemed okay. The medical items, you can imagine how pleased we were to see those. As I recall, the bombs were purified water to find and waiting on those for months. As for the crates, they still needed to be checked for any risk. Now, the thing with airdrops, they're not exactly subtle. Smoke, noise of the plane, those bright green parachutes, they're gonna get you noticed. And when you're in the middle of bandit country, that's a problem.
guerrillas attacked?
Yeah, from what I heard, it was pretty intense. I don't have the numbers, but maybe 6 or 7 were killed.
And what happened when the supplies had been secured?
Adams would fire a flare. Back at the camp, of course, we'd heard all the gunfire, but that flare, when we spotted it, I don't know, felt like finding a moment of hope or something.
Sure. I can only imagine. And thanks for sharing. It puts a human perspective on my work. Speaking of which, your friend, do you think he'd be willing to contribute further? Even, off the record? What with the topic of my article? Having an expert, an instructor on the laws of war.
Look, I'm sorry. I know he'd help out however he could, but listen, he died on Stratus. Year and a bit later. Landmine.